This Week in Parasitism is brought to you by the American Society for Microbiology at microbeworld.org/TWiP. This Week in Parasitism, episode number 42, recorded on August 10th, 2012. Hi, everybody. I'm Vincent Raqueniello, and I'm with Dickson Despommier.
Good afternoon or good morning, Vince.
Could you be any softer?
I can liven it up.
I just don't know who you are, actually. I don't recognize you. I don't know your voice. Let me know. Where did you go to school again?
I went to the University of Notre Dame.
Dickson is back.
Yes.
It's good to see you, even though I give you hell.
I don't take it that way, Vince. It's
You
just
keep coming back.
I do for
Let's
more.
just say I don't give hell to everyone.
I appreciate that, I think.
That's a sideways compliment.
That's worse than that, actually, but we won't go there.
Now, you were away for 6 weeks, is that right?
I was, from June 21st until August 8th.
And you were collecting parasites?
Hopefully not, but one never knows.
You drove across the USA.
We bought a brand new car, Vince. We bought a Prius station wagon. I know you're not a big fan of electric hybrids, but because you enjoy the joy of shifting and putting your foot in the clutch and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
I got to tell you that this is a vehicle. It's not an automobile. It's almost like sitting at the command center for the Starship Enterprise. It has gauges.
You always wanted to be Captain Kirk, right?
Well, yeah, this was what we did. We even pretended that the fuel indicator is done in little lines, almost bricks. So we pretended they were dilithium crystals, and
Nice.
as we got lower, of course, Scotty had to do something radical, like fill up.
Can it do it?
Scotty, give me some more
So
power.
let's say if you take off from where you live
Yes.
here in New Jersey,
Yes.
or over in New Jersey, how
Yes.
far could you get without putting more gas in the car?
Well, it depends on the hilliness of the drive. If you drove through Pennsylvania, it would be different than if you drove through, let's say, Kansas.
Well, on your drive, how far did you go the first day?
We drove all the way to South Bend, Indiana.
And you didn't have to fill?
Of course we did. Sure, we did. Absolutely.
And you had to fill like 10 times, right? Once?
Once. I mean, it's about 600 miles from, I don't know, if you go to MapQuest, you can check it out, from Fort Lee, New Jersey to South Bend. It gives you about
South Bend, Indiana.
South Bend, Indiana. It's
That's
about
close to where the swine flu outbreak is. Right?
exactly. And it's, of course, where I got my PhD degree.
Let's see.
See, I
Oh,
think
was that like a homecoming?
there was some nostalgia associated with it.
700 miles. 12 hours, basically.
So we did it.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
a straight shot, isn't it?
it is a very straight shot on Route 80, provided, of course, that there's no construction going on, which there was, of course. But nonetheless, we made it in a day. And on a tank and a half of gas.
You weren't far. I was in Madison.
Yeah.
You probably went south of Madison after South Bend, right?
Very south of Madison, that's right.
Chicago's only an hour and a half from Madison.
Right. So Route 80 actually swings south and takes you through the American heartland.
Did it give you a feeling in your heart driving through America?
Or
heartburn?
I had so many mixed heartburn. Yes, that's right, depending on where you ate for lunch. There were many thoughts that came to mind as my wife and I were
None
traveling.
of TWiP, right?
None of TWiP. You know what we ended up doing? This is ridiculous. None of TWiP, that's right. It was a vacation, remember? We tried to name all of the states, all of the capitals of the states, and the sayings for each state.
That's a good one.
Now, my wife had my brand new iPad on her lap, and she could actually conjure this up on the internet and find out what the answers were. And it sounds like a trivial game. Of course it is. You'd play this game in grade school almost, but not many people know all of the sayings for all of the states.
Okay, Indiana. What's the capital?
The capital of Indiana is Indianapolis.
And the saying is?
Hoosiers.
The Hoosiers?
Yeah.
Or the Hoosier State?
The Hoosier State.
How about Ohio?
The capital is Columbus,
Mm-hmm.
and the saying is the Buckeye State.
Wow. And then Pennsylvania. These are the ones you
Pennsylvania.
drove through.
Yeah. Pennsylvania is the capital of Pennsylvania is Harrisburg.
Wow. I bet a lot of people would say Philadelphia.
Or another city, that's right.
And
Or Pittsburgh,
the
even,
saying.
is the Keystone State.
Wow.
I
And
know.
finally,
Jersey.
New Jersey.
Jersey. Yeah, Jersey. Well, it's, of course, the capital is Trenton, and the saying is the Garden State, which is, of course, a misnomer today because there are very few gardens left in New Jersey.
I have a garden.
I don't. I actually have a balcony garden, so I can't say I don't have a
There you
garden.
go. Actually, if you go in the south, middle
Yeah.
south and the southwest of New Jersey, you find a lot of.
I agree. I think
lands.
there's some beautiful places in New Jersey still intact and
Of course,
functional.
and the ocean is beautiful. As
And
well.
you've got the Pine Barrens, which is a beautiful place. Actually.
And on this said trip of yours,
Yes.
where you drove out, how far west? You went to
we
Wyoming?
went to Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, and Utah. Those are
Wow.
the 4 states that we went to, and
a
that
lot
was
of
quite a
good
trip.
stuff.
Oh, we
And-
actually drove. I drove a little bit into Idaho, so I actually had a wonderful Western tour. All I could see out there was the smoke from fires. It was incredible. There were lots of forest fires
Because
this
it's
year.
so dry.
So dry, the drought, and then driving back, of course, you got to see all the dead cornfields and the scrubby-looking soybeans that you could see throughout all of the farms that up until Ohio. After Ohio, the drought seemed to dissipate, and then into Pennsylvania, of course, it wasn't there at all. So
All better reason to build vertical farms, right?
here. Well, in some cases, that's true. It's very true. I won't argue against that one, of course.
Now, on your drive, did you fish?
Yes.
Not until you got out west, though, right?
No, we fished the moment we got to a little place called Kemmerer, Wyoming. Some of our listeners may know where that is, and some may not, but they will all know where it is after I tell them why it's famous. It's not famous for fishing. It's famous because it's the hometown, the origin of J.C. Penney. You don't find these things out until you travel. And it's got this big sign, "Welcome to Kemmerer, home of the first J.C. Penney store." And it's still there. You can go into the first J.C. Penney store and you can buy replicas of everything from their original catalog. It's quite
How do you
fun.
spell it?
Kemmerer.
Oh, look at that. It turns right up in the Google search.
Kemmerer.
There it is.
Yep.
And it is
It's in southwestern Wyoming.
southwestern, yeah.
It's
I was in Seattle and I saw the first Starbucks.
See that?
There
See
you go.
that? And now look at them.
And here's the first TWiP.
That's right. That's right.
Someday they'll come to New York and say, "Oh, it was the first TWiP was here."
That's right.
All right.
Yep.
So was the fishing great?
No, the fishing was spotty. By that I mean that in some cases it was phenomenal. And in other cases where I expected it to be the same as it was the last time I was there, it was not.
Should that be the title of this episode? The fishing was spotty.
No. I think we should do it. We shouldn't do this about fishing.
No.
That's how I relax. That's how I set my clock back to zero, so to speak, and start a brand new thought pattern.
Do you consider the vacation a failure because fishing was poor?
Not at all. No, we had some remarkable hikes. We went to the Teton National Forest and also the Teton National Park. We went to Yellowstone Park, and we went to Glacier National Park. And so we had wonderful hikes and great vistas and terrific photography and not such great food. I hate to say it, but you don't go out into that part of the world to find gourmet level cooking.
You're going to get emails.
I'm sure of it. I'm sure that there are some places that are exceptions to those rules, particularly Mexican restaurants in those areas. There are some remarkably good Mexican restaurants in those areas, and diners. All right, for breakfast. Some of the diners in the back roads of these little towns have remarkable places. So you can't make a blanket statement about the food, but in general, we found it difficult to find restaurants, except in Jackson, which of course is a big tourist attraction, and so there's lots of restaurants there. But otherwise, we were pretty hard pressed. I mean, you go to Glacier, and whatever in your cooler, that's what you're going to eat.
Have you done this kind of trip before?
Yeah, I have. I actually enjoy going out west. I've mostly done it by myself, but my wife in recent years has become a big fan of the West and hiking, and so we've gone to places like Alberta and even in Europe.
I've never driven out west. I've flown there.
Well, I can say that if you're not with somebody else, it's a pretty boring trip, even if you have Sirius Radio, which I have. I was not impressed.
You don't need Sirius Radio. You just need podcasts.
That's true. That's true. You're absolutely right. So at any rate, the vacation is over, basically.
And you're back, and now we can TWiP.
We can do that, Vince, so why don't we?
So I thought for the first... You just got back yesterday.
That's true.
Your car was still full of gear.
And
my apologies to the listeners if they don't like this car talk at the beginning, but I thought you should know what Dickson was doing.
And Vince, you didn't say what you were doing.
I was just working.
What were you doing in Madison, Wisconsin?
Well, I was at the annual meeting
yes.
of the American Society for Virology.
Yes.
A great meeting.
Yes.
And we did a TWiP there, Rich Condit and I.
Right.
And it's a fabulous episode, 193.
Sorry, I missed it.
With two great guests, Carolyn Coyne and Sarah Sawyer.
Aha.
Fabulous young virologists. This is the future of the field. They were just terrific.
Neat.
And I did many other travels this summer. But
yeah, where else did you go, Vince? Didn't you go to Glasgow?
I did go to Glasgow earlier.
And why did you go there?
I got a plaque.
Aha, a plaque, not a dental plaque.
No.
Or a plaque of calcium carbonate on your brain.
I did go to the dentist, though.
You did? That's good.
I had a little minor surgery.
So what did the plaque say, Vince?
I had, it says the Sir Michael Stoker Award 2012.
Aha.
They gave it to me over in Glasgow for my teaching and virology, I guess.
That's wonderful.
It's a beautiful plaque. It's got
it is
3D reconstructions of viruses on it.
It's fabulous.
As Glasgow, I was in Dublin, I was in Seattle, I was in Washington, D.C., San Francisco.
CC?
A CC? No, I wasn't in a CC.
I will be in November.
I'm going to D.C. again this weekend.
Right.
I'm going all over the place. I might go to New Zealand in December.
I will encourage you to go there. That's a great place. It's a great place. The people are so friendly, and the countryside is beautiful. It's worth seeing.
Going to San Francisco also in a couple of weeks for ICAC, and we're going to do a TWiM there.
Aha. Right.
Anyway, so that's what I've been doing. Then I've been here in the lab. Our research is moving forward.
You just got renewed on your grant?
Got a new grant I got. I've been blogging a lot, and it's been fun. I'm having a good summer.
Fantastic.
And it's nice and hot, which I love because I'm of Mediterranean origin.
You're swarthy of complexion also,
My son says that. I says I get very dark in the summer. It's just walking around. Yeah, I tan very quickly.
You do. I do too, actually.
So I thought since you weren't able to prepare, but we should give our listeners a TWiP fix.
Right.
We could do all email because we have so many back emails we can never.
Let's do that.
So let's do them all.
You bet.
The first one is from Jesse. Who writes, Dear Doctors Racaniello and Despommier, huzzah! I have tracked down Dick's missing book on tropical medicine.
Yes?
Or at least another copy of said book. While listening to TWiP number 40, my ears perked up when Dick said he had lent a book to a student only to have it never returned.
And he's the student?
A quick Google search found the following book, Tropical Medicine and Parasitology Classic Investigation.
Yes!
By Mott and Keene of Columbia University.
That's the one.
Circa 1974, which I believe is the book in question.
It is the one, and it's a 2-volume book, actually.
I managed to find a copy online for a steal, less than $10, including shipping, and immediately ordered it.
Oh!
In some days, I should receive a copy, which I will gladly send along to Dr. Despommier as a token of my gratitude for everything that he has done for me.
Oh, that is so kind.
More than you would think.
Oh, my goodness.
You don't deserve it, do you?
I don't.
Yeah, you
no,
do.
I'm unworthy.
You're actually a good guy.
Unworthy.
Never mind.
I have no work ethic. That's what he's just driving at.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm not going to fool around. People don't like it.
Oh, okay. All right.
As a pharmacist working the night shift at a popular chain store, I quickly grew tired of listening to internet radio at night and needed some further stimulation. Your podcast was one of the first that I found, and I quickly listened to every episode multiple times even.
Wow.
This podcast, along with a few other life-changing experiences, has inspired me to completely change the direction of my life. I now have solid plans in place to go back to medical school
Oh, my.
once my debts are knocked down a bit, with hopes of becoming an infectious disease specialist.
Fantastic.
My dream is to join Paul Farmer's organization, Partners in Health,
Sure.
and practice tropical medicine while helping those most in need.
Sure. Oh, that's very noble. That's incredible.
See, Dickson, this is why we need to do TWiP.
I don't
You
doubt
influence
it.
people.
Well, you do too. I mean, you're part of this team. Come
Well,
on.
I can't do it without you.
Or nor
Unless
I
you want me
without.
to get another parasitologist
No,
who
this
can tell
is-
stories.
There are plenty of them out there,
Really?
by the way.
Give me a list.
No!
Well, look, you're not going to be around forever.
I want to tell these stories. Well, the recordings might.
I want you to do TWiP with me. Will you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Of course I will.
Thank you both for all that you do and for taking the time to read my email. If you reply with a mailing address for yourselves at Columbia, I will gladly send along the missing book once it
Wow.
arrives. As always, looking forward to your next TWiP. Sincerely, Jesse.
That's so generous.
It's really nice.
You know what?
This has been in since you went away.
By the way, Jesse, I will reward you for that kindness by sending you books that I've produced. I will send you
You
some
should
books.
sign them for him.
Of course I will. So we'll have a book exchange. This is great. Absolutely
He says,
great.
P.S. Are you missing any books, Dr. Racaniello? Your work on polio is greatly appreciated as my grandfather suffers from a mild case of poliomyelitis.
Oh, dear.
So it is obviously a topic that is near and dear to me.
Right.
I'll have to think about that. I don't think I'm missing
Huh.
any, but we'll see. You seem to be good at finding books.
Right.
The next one's from Keely, who writes, to introduce myself, my name is Keely, and I'm currently a second-year graduate student at UCLA.
Oh, right.
I work on parasitic worms under Alyssa Hallam, and
Excellent.
I TA for the undergraduate parasitology class taught
Cool.
by Patricia Johnson.
Nice.
First off, thanks for all the podcasts. I really enjoy them, and they keep me reading new and interesting papers
Uh-huh.
that are a bit outside of what is usually on my radar.
Uh-huh.
Also, though I was a microbiology major with a strong interest in parasites, my undergraduate institution lacked a full parasitology course, so I learned most of my parasitology from my own reading. I really appreciated the review that TWiP gave me before I started working on parasites
Terrific.
for my graduate program. Anyhow, I was listening to an older episode that I missed somehow, and you mentioned at some point having listeners on the show as a guest. If you ever decide to try and do this, I would love to toss my name in the hat.
Consider it done. Give us your telephone number. We'll be glad to put you in.
What is a telephone?
Well,
We got her email. You want to have her on?
sure.
All right.
Absolutely.
We'll get in touch, Keely. Who knows when we'll do this again?
Oh, soon. We'll
All
do
right.
it soon.
We're going to do a regular schedule.
Sure. Twice a month.
You heard it.
Inshallah.
If you don't do it, I'm going to give you a bottle of wine each time.
That's the reward for not doing it?
No, sorry. Next one is from Michael.
Michael.
I'm 63 years old. I became ill while serving in Vietnam at the age of 20. For 43 years, I've been going to one physician after another, Army, VA, private. I've never been able to identify or diagnose my illness. And every medicine they ever gave me never worked.
Oh, dear.
For years, I argued that it was parasitic, but they told me it was hypochondriasis.
Oh, dear.
Well, I'm still hopelessly suffering, and he describes that he has boils all over his body. He thinks he has parasitosis, so he actually bought a microscope, and he took pictures of his...
Yeah.
And he is convinced, Dr. Despommier,
Yes.
that he has nematode infection. He says he has thousands and thousands of nematodes, microfilariasis worms, and flukes in his body. And he wants to send you a picture to ask you if this is
Sure.
the case.
Please do. Please do. I'll be glad to render an opinion, although it may not be...
What you want to
I
hear.
may not know what it is, but I'll be glad to look at the pictures.
Is it possible that he has a lot of nematodes in his body?
Everything is possible, Vince. I don't... You know, I've lived too long to ignore these kinds of letters because I've received many over my lifetime. And I also worked in a diagnostic lab for the first 2 years that I started my career here. And we saw bizarre things that no one else thought was possible. But it was not just possible, it actually existed. So I don't dismiss any of this.
But don't you think that a lab would have diagnosed this?
You would have thought that, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So it may be that there is some psychological basis for his illness, but if you go that far to learn how to use a microscope and then to sample all these lesions, the least they can do is look at them.
Yeah, he said they didn't want to look at the pictures.
I know. So if you send them to me, I'll be happy to look at them.
You're a good person, Dickson.
No, Vince, I'm embarrassed by your statement.
Well, you are.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will respond if you hear this, Michael. Otherwise, we'll send you an email. You can send us the photos.
Right. I mean, I get pictures like that all the time from our Department of Pathology.
Really?
And some of them turn out to be parasitic, and some of them turn out to be artifacts.
We should do a TV show on that.
We call it Acta Artifacta.
Do you know that there's a TV show about this hospital that's just airing?
I did not.
They're going into the ER.
This hospital?
Yeah, it's like every so many weeks.
Really?
And they go in and you can see things happening. And
You're
there's a big
kidding.
billboard on the turnpike advertising it.
It's a national television program?
Yeah, national. I think it's
What's
Channel
it called?
7. Hold on.
Not ER. That's already been done. That was Michael Crichton's deal. In fact, one of the people that used to help us with our course every year, Joshua Stillman.
Okay, here it is. It's called New York Med.
New York Med. I like it.
It premiered July 10th, Tuesdays at 10 p.m. on ABC.
I'm going to watch that.
There you go.
I'm going to see it. I'm going to judge it for accuracy. That might be a big mistake on this.
Your buddy, what's the doctor's name who's on TV all the time?
Oz.
Oz, he's in it.
Right. Excellent.
Okay, the next one is from our friend in the Philippines, Dr. Rafael Fernandez.
Uh-huh.
Good day, doctors.
Good day to you.
I did not hesitate to write this right after hearing an email you responded to on TWiP 39.
Uh-huh.
I would like to thank cytotechnologist Rebecca for the comment and Dr. Dickson for additional info on how tricho is vertically transmitted from mothers to female newborns and how it could be lifelong.
Right.
Not so many years ago, I had a rare opportunity to have a urinalysis result that came out, which was trichomoniasis positive.
Yes.
The female patient, who was in her early 20s, denied that she had no history of sexual contact, but knowing very well that tricho is a sexually transmitted infection, I immediately did not believe her.
Right.
Nevertheless, I treated her with an anti-protozoal drug.
Right.
Now that I know how tricho is transmitted, I owe that patient my apology.
There you go.
Now, that is an impact, Dickson.
It is.
I mean it.
No, I totally agree with you because there are lots of gynecologists that don't have a background in parasitic diseases, and therefore the common way it's transmitted, of course, is sexually, but it's not the only way. So you have to allow the door to be open for both, acquiring it at birth or acquiring it from a sexual partner.
So we can make an impact one person at a time, Dickson.
We do that.
It's really important.
That's fantastic.
I hope now you see how important it is to do this.
I do. Vince, I've always seen it.
Okay. Next one is from Tracy. Dear Dick and Vincent, if I may be so bold.
You may.
I listened to the podcast on Leishmania this week as I prepped for my Leishmania lecture in medical microbiology. I was struck by Dick's comment that we didn't know what the A mastigotes ate while in the phagolysosome.
Exactly.
I ran across an annual review in microbiology article that seems to address the metabolic needs and potential nutrient sources for the A mastigotes while in the phagolysosome.
Yes.
And she provides a link to a paper in Annual Reviews of Microbiology. Metabolic pathways required for the intracellular survival of Leishmania by Malcolm McConville and Thomas Naderer down in Australia.
Right.
And they talk about it. So
they're discussing the mechanisms of nutrient acquisition, or are they actually discussing the nutrients?
It's metabolic pathways required for.
Okay.
I think you should read it, Dickson.
I will read it.
We'll put the link in the show notes.
You bet I'll read it.
I enjoy your podcasts, and my students find them an easy way to approach very complex material.
Great.
Keep up the good work. Laura is in the UK.
Excellent.
Next one.
By the way, Vince, the UK has done very well in the Olympics this year.
Have they? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're third in terms of total medals. That's quite remarkable, actually.
Now, the next one.
That was the last time I looked. This, it may change, but
you think
the home country's athletics always does better than they ordinarily do, because there's this adrenaline rush that you get by being in front of your own people. And it was clearly evident from the outcome of a lot of the events in this year's Olympics. Quite remarkable to see. Inspiring.
All right, the next one, I'm trying to find out who sent this. But I can't. It doesn't have a sent name, so I just read it.
Right.
First, I would like to say that I followed your podcast while I took my undergraduate degree and found them useful for revision. I'm now starting a PhD at Nottingham University in England this year.
I'm very familiar with
Would like to thank you for providing such great podcasts.
Right.
I would like to ask, as mosquitoes carry a number of parasites,
Yes.
viruses that can infect humans,
Yes.
is it possible for one mosquito to infect a person with more than one species of parasite/virus? For example, could a person get malaria and leishmania at the same time from one mosquito?
Well, that's a trick question, isn't it?
Now, why is it tricky, Dickie?
Well, I'll tell you, Vinny. Because mosquitoes don't transmit leishmaniasis.
All right, well, what about malaria and West Nile virus?
That would be possible,
Has it ever happened?
except that culisine mosquitoes don't transmit malaria to
Good.
humans.
So you'd have to have the same vector. So do we know any examples where a parasite
So let's try another one.
and a virus could be transmitted by the same
Sure.
mosquitoes? Aedes aegypti.
Yeah, let's take that one.
So
It's yellow fever
fever.
and filariasis.
Okay, so where does filariasis occur? What's the endemic region?
Oh, it depends on the species. For instance, Wuchereria bancrofti is found throughout the Pacific. It's found throughout India.
Is yellow fever there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the same is true for Africa and South America. So you could have the same vector transmitting, although Aedes aegypti mosquitoes in South America transmit yellow fever to monkeys, to people mostly, not to monkeys. The Haemogagus mosquito transmits it mostly to monkeys in South America. You can have a protozoan, a worm, a virus. I think, you can draw the line at some organisms like Rickettsia, because most of those were transmitted by ticks and mites. So you'd have to narrow it down to a certain group of parasites, and I include viruses in that group. But sure, you can have more than one thing transmitted by a vector. If he had said ticks, then I can guarantee you that you've got Borrelia, you've got Burgdorferi, that is, which causes Lyme disease, right?
Right.
You've got Ehrlichiosis, which is a rickettsia. And you've got Babesia, which is a protozoan. And I know somebody that got all three of them at the same time from the same tick.
Okay.
So you can have multiple infections from the same vector. The answer is yes. But you have to be careful how you define your vectors. So when you say leishmaniasis, that's sandflies. Okay?
Right.
And as far as I know, sandflies don't transmit, infections that I'm familiar with, at least put it this way. I don't know of any viral infections that sandflies transmit, but there might be. Do you know of any, Vince? Tsutsugamuji disease is...
Sandfly fever.
Sandfly fever. And what organism causes sandfly
I'm
fever?
looking it up.
Right. We have the
Now,
virtue.
sandfly fever can refer to leishmaniasis
Right.
or an arboviral infection.
An arbovirus. What does arbo stand for?
Arthropod borne.
Excellent. So is a sandfly an arthropod, Vince?
No.
Of course it is.
It is an arthropod?
Yeah, it has jointed legs.
Okay.
Of course.
I didn't learn my lesson well from the last TWiP.
That's right. We spent a whole TWiP on this. Do we have to go back and repeat
No,
all
I'm
of
going
these?
to start an entomology podcast with an expert in it.
Oh, that would be a great idea.
Would
by
you
the
like
way.
to participate now and then in that?
Of
No, you
course.
can't. You're too busy.
No, that's not the point. I'm not an expert in that area.
Neither am I.
So Tony James and other people like him are, and I would highly recommend Robert Gwadz. We had Robert Gwadz on our show. He's a medical entomologist. He's a practicing medical entomologist. Why did you bring up the Swiss cheese brain picture?
That's our next email.
Cysticercosis.
From John. Okay, this sounds rather unpleasant, but may explain a lot about the world. And he sends an article in Discover by Carl Zimmer.
Right.
The Brain Hidden Epidemic. Tapeworms living inside people's brains.
Well, that's not hidden.
So this is a story that appeared in many places at the same time, that many people seem to be positive for.
How new is that article?
This is from May 15th, 2012.
Really?
There was also one in the Atlantic at the same time.
In the Atlantic? Really?
And they says that a lot of people have this tapeworm in their brain, and
Neurocystis.
and that's why they behave weirdly.
It's widespread in some places, particularly in northern countries in South America, like Venezuela and Colombia.
Could we get someone on TWiP to talk about this?
Sure.
An expert?
Yeah.
Who would it be?
Well, a good friend of mine, Ray Kuhn, has done a lot of work on that. He's at Wake Forest University.
Yeah.
We could get Ray on, or Anna Flisser in Mexico City. She does a lot of work on that as well.
How about we go down there and
perfect
interview her and have a nice meal?
Yeah, we could have some sangrita and some tequila. We could have a good time there, actually.
Next one is from Suzanne.
Okay.
Maybe Dickson knows, or maybe someone else has mentioned it, but if you wash immediately with soap and cold water, poison ivy oil washes off more easily.
Right.
Wash all your clothes in cold water, too.
Right.
Most people want to wash with warm water.
I know.
I've done it, and boy, did the rash spread. But cool or cold water works best.
Right.
I hope his has cleared up by the time you get this.
This is such an erratically visited website, or podcast, rather, that, yes, it's been so long. If it hasn't cleared up by now.
We talked about your poison ivy way back, and a nice listener is concerned for
I'm deeply impressed.
She sent a link to a website, poison-ivy.org.
Cool.
It tells you all you need to know.
Thank you very much.
And Suzanne is from Texas. So
Thanks for
I guess
your
they have
concern.
poison ivy in Texas, right?
They certainly do.
Next one is from Jim. Jim is our friend from Virginia.
Okay.
Dickson mentioned this 2-volume set on the last TWiP.
He did.
This link from the World Catalog may have specifics, as well as where Volume 1 can be bought, and cheaply, too. Right. Volume 2 is in the World Catalog database, but not linked to any library or store.
Right.
The key thing is that the title may be Tropical Medicine and Parasitology. Is that correct?
Yeah.
They found a few Volume 1s, but not a Volume 2. Might
exactly.
a Volume 2 be sold as a Volume 1?
We're going to find out, because we're going to be sent Volume 1 by Jesse.
I like looking at old books, and we'll keep an eye out in this area. Maybe a mention on a TWiP would alert listeners to also watch for the set. Not an expensive item. With reference to deer flies.
Yes.
I have used these tread knot patches right here.
Tread knot. I like it.
On my hat for several years, and they are quite good. Just ordered another big batch. Sounds like something Dickson can use if he is not doing so already.
Oh, Vincent, we encountered deer flies on our last trip out west that was just totally obnoxious. We were driven off the river by them.
Mm-hmm.
So they can be more than just a pest.
Only negative aspect is that they're only good for one day. The last of my current batch were purchased last year and just worked just fine.
Oh, dear. Well,
beautiful shows all.
Wow.
Stephen writes, this is for TWiP for your information. By the way, it's not easy to send TWiP from the Nature app because it assumes an email address. I didn't know there was a Nature app. We'll look into that. Bovine tuberculosis.
Yes.
Disguised by liver fluke.
Oh, fasciola?
This is an article in Nature.
Really?
Bovine tuberculosis could be spreading across Britain because the most widely used test for the disease is ineffective when cattle are infected with a common liver parasite, Fasciola hepatica.
Right.
So it
masks the positivity of the TB test. Isn't that interesting?
Neat.
Wow. I wonder why. Does it interfere with Th2 responses? Because that's a delayed hypersensitive type response that you're looking for TB. Is that correct?
In humans, for sure.
Yeah. You know, again, to relate back to this trip that I just took, I encountered huge herds of buffalo. All right? And
you're looking for antibodies.
It turned out that buffalo are riddled with tuberculosis. And a lot of herds out there in Wyoming and Colorado and even up through Canada have tuberculosis. And it's one of the big reasons why they're not more commercialized.
I see.
Because they taste great.
Here's the key sentence. The authors suggest that the fluke may alter the production by T lymphocytes of the protein interferon gamma, which is crucial to a genuine result in both the skin test and the second most common test for bovine TB, the interferon gamma release assay.
Interesting.
There you go.
Yep.
These immunosuppressive parasites.
They have their way with us because of it.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yes, a very interesting correlation there.
Micah writes, "Hi, I have been one of your Micah. She says, pronounced Micah like the mineral.
Right.
Micah, I have been one of your silent fans for about a year now, and I absolutely love all three of your podcasts."
3? Oh, you mean all 3 varieties of our podcasts, or yours, I should say.
Hey, we've only done 3 TWiP.
Wait a minute, this is number 42.
Yes, all 3 varieties. I'm
Got
a
it.
scientist by heart.
Yes.
No, I am a scientist at heart and by training, but a horse trainer for my living.
Oh.
I recall a past podcast about a dressage barn that had an outbreak of toxoplasmosis.
That's correct.
And I am trying to search for it. But
It was in Los
toxo
Angeles.
is a very popular subject for you guys, and the list is long. While I am willing to listen to all episodes again to try and find it, can you give me a hint as to which episode it was and shorten my search? Did we have more than one episode on toxo?
I don't recall.
Let me look. Can I look now?
Yeah, sure.
Where would I look, Dickson?
You should probably look on all 42 podcasts and just type out the word toxoplasma.
Yeah, there's no search engine over at Microbe World.
No.
It's really a shame. And you can't even list all the episodes, which is something I need to work on. And I will, but not right now.
Now you're busy, Vince. You're busy, just like the rest of us. Thank goodness.
But I do have a list of things that
you do.
I would like to do.
As you're thumbing through these,
yes.
the beauty of your artwork, I haven't mentioned any of this on the air, but this is a podcast that's supplemented with remarkable visuals, right? And Vincent has done a fantastic job of integrating the visual aspects to the words and pictures. So Vince does most of the work on this. I want the listeners to know that even though we're equal partners with regards to the words of this, Vince is post-production integration of material. There's a toxo.
So it's TWiP 13 and 12. There are 2 episodes.
They're tied together. That's right.
Yeah, we did 2 on toxo.
Yep.
We should do another one. Microbeworld.org/TWiP 12 or 13. There you go.
Right. We should do another one on toxo. It's a very important organism.
Your show has been an inspiration to me as well as a fun link to my past life as a scientist. Listening to TWiM has prompted me to go on a several days-long spree of reading reprints of my grandmother's research. The earliest I can find is 1933.
Whoa!
And she is the lead author in the Journal of Bacteriology on carotenoids and vitamin A in bacteria.
I'll be darned.
She also was interested in nutrition and color inheritance in Serratia and published her research for 4 decades. I can't help but think that she was the rare woman bacteriologist who led by example for so many women back then. Thanks for keeping me interested and helping me know my grandmother better.
Nice.
Rebecca Lansfield was another one of those early.
And so was Beatrice Siegel.
No, I didn't know her.
I knew her. She was
Lansfield
here.
was at the Rock, right?
Yeah, I actually... Let's see, did I meet her? Was she still alive when I was there? 1967 through 70. It's a blur.
Next one is from Mike.
Okay. And what
Doctors. I've recently discovered podcasts, and the very first thing I searched for was for one on parasites.
Ha!
I've been fascinated with parasites since grade school, and will be starting my 3rd year of veterinary school in the fall, so I was very excited to see a podcast devoted entirely to parasites.
Cool.
The only one of its kind, Dickson.
Well, there you go.
Granted, a bulk of my parasite knowledge is animal-based. I still very much enjoy TWiP. I started your first episode and have just finished the episode on hookworms. A few things I wanted to bring up from the perspective of a budding veterinary pathologist.
Please.
Parasitologist. First, A. caninum.
A caninum. Ancylostoma caninum.
is capable of infecting young pups through the bitch's milk. And I was wondering if any human hookworms have been documented to do the same, at least for animals. Hookworms can also be contracted from eating the third larval stage, generally pica, or from eating a variety of other animals that have eaten the third larval stage and act as a transport host. For example, the larvae eaten by a mouse enter a hibernation state until a cat or dog comes along and eats the mouse.
It's called a dower larva.
As the tissues are digested away, the larva wakes up, receives environmental cues, and will proceed to develop into an adult. This is a particularly common way for cats to contract a tubiform, giving their predatory nature. Has anything similar ever been documented with a human species of hookworm? That's his question.
Peter Hotez would be the source of that answer.
You don't know the answer?
No, I don't know the answer.
All
It
right.
would be a very difficult thing to prove, though, because you'd have to actually obtain mother's milk from hookworm-infected patients and then do a microscopic examination for the larvae to assume that they are in the milk before you say that the child can actually acquire their hookworm this way.
Okay.
And in fact, newborns, right, that have never hit the ground, so to speak, and are only breastfed under these conditions should acquire their hookworm from their mother.
Yeah.
So maybe Peter knows the answer.
I'll pass it on to Peter.
Yeah, Peter spends a lot of time thinking about things like this.
Second, as to the question of prevalence of hookworms in dogs in America, yes, they are definitely endemic. They are a problem across the nation, especially shelters, as are whipworms, ascarids, coccidia.
Yes.
Third, in one of the episodes on tapeworms, Dick was comparing the pork tapeworm to the beef tapeworm and mentioned that horses and cattle are different from pigs and asked Vince why. Dick's answer was...
I was wrong.
The cattle and horses are both ruminants, while a pig is an omnivore. I don't know if this was an accident, but horses are not ruminants.
No, they're not.
They do not have the complex foregut fermentation system of cattle, sheep, goats, deer, and other similar
Yeah, we had
animals.
another email about that.
You want me not to read it? Or you want
No,
me to
you can read it, but
I
I've
know,
already
but
been
it's always,
corrected.
it's informative.
It definitely is.
Horses are hindgut fermenters and do a bulk of their digestion in their colon and cecum appendix, and both are herbivores. And last, Vince, uh-oh.
Oh dear.
You had peppered Dick with questions on what animal species had what nematode parasites. To broaden your list, ascarids are found in horses, pigs, cats, dogs, cattle, raccoons, wild canids, and felids, and mostly any other mammal.
In addition, all of the pinnipeds and all of the cetaceans.
What is a pinniped? A seal?
Yes.
And a cetacean's a whale.
Yes.
I peppered you. Did you see that?
You peppered
Pepper
me.
spray.
Hey, we had some of that on our trip.
Why?
Oh, Vince.
For people?
No. It's for grizzly bears.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
Did
that's
you
okay.
encounter a bear?
We encountered several, but not directly. We were in our car or camped across the river from the bear. But the river poses no problem to a bear, so the answer is the bear actually crossed the river with her cub.
So why did the bear cross the river?
To get to the... It actually didn't. It didn't walk across the river. It swam across the river.
Okay. Hookworms are just as ubiquitous in the animal kingdom. That's all for now, but I'm sure I'll write again. Keep up the great work, gents.
Right. So...
Wait, let me finish. I understand that
Okay.
this is a long email and will not be offended if you don't read it on the air, but I would greatly appreciate answers to my questions if possible. Did you answer his question? No.
What was the question?
One question we have to ask Peter Hotez.
Right. Can hookworm be transmitted by mother's milk from a newborn, from the mother to the newborn?
Right. Then he wrote again and said, Doctors, again, I write to you because a few things had slipped my mind.
Whoops.
Dick, when you were describing the life cycle of Ascaris, you said there was an operculum on Ascaris eggs.
There is.
I have seen many Ascaris eggs of several species and have never seen an operculum.
Correct.
Did you misspeak or have just not been looking carefully enough?
I didn't misspeak. It's on Ascaris lumbricoides eggs, and if you go to the internet on Google and type out Ascaris egg operculum under images, you will get the pictures.
He says, or is it specific to A. lumbricoides? And that's the answer. He's on top of things, isn't he?
I think it is specific to...
It has always been my understanding that the operculum is rather rare in nematode species.
It is.
Members of the orders Oxyurida and Enoplida.
And Trichiurida.
It's Speaking of Enoplida, one of the many parasites we discussed in parasitology courses that is part of our curriculum was Dioctophyma renale.
Yes.
The giant red kidney worm.
Correct.
A particularly cool video of a dog in Canada that was unfortunate enough to contract a few of these has been posted on YouTube.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a case in people that you know of?
I believe there have.
You have a link?
We will get it.
I'm just kidding. There have been cases in people of the giant red kidney worm?
Yeah, they're rare, but they're there.
Should we talk about it sometime? No?
It's too rare to talk about,
Okay.
I think.
Lastly, I just listened to the Strongyloides podcast.
Yes.
GS. What's GS? Do GS-like people often pass the larva in their stool, but in the veterinary world, they are the exception. Most of the time in other domestic species, the eggs are what are passed. Does this ever happen with people?
Strongyloides always passes as larvae.
Have you ever seen a Strongyloides egg?
Yes, sure. It's in the tissue of the villus. You can actually see the eggs.
Pigs. I think that's what he meant. Pigs. Do pigs, like people, often pass the larva in their stool?
I believe they do. So do dogs, so do monkeys. So Strongyloides is a promiscuous parasite, as are so many others. And it's not considered a zoonosis because human-to-human transfer does occur. But a lot of these other parasites that we've been talking about, almost half of them, are zoonotic.
Yeah. This particular parasite can be debilitating and even fatal to piglets, but with the modern management techniques in the American swine industry, the problem has ceased almost entirely.
Sure.
Thanks again for humoring me, gents.
Humoring. I hope you're informing us as well as we are
That's
informing you. So this is a great learning experience both ways.
Thanks for listening. Daniel writes, "Hello again, professors. Sorry to keep bugging you." No, you're never bugging us, right?
Is that a pun?
Uh-huh. But I thought you might be interested in a website I happened upon the other day. It's a crowdsourced pseudo-video game designed by UCLA students in which the players have to identify red blood cells that are infected with malaria.
I love it. I love it. Any way to teach the subject, just go for it.
It's interesting. I'll read a little bit about the description. Analysis and related diagnosis of medical images, regardless of the source and imaging modality, are tasks that require a great deal of expertise, demanding a significant training of medical practitioners prior to being able to accurately interpret and diagnose such images.
True.
This is particularly true in analysis of microscopic data, creating challenges in resource-limited settings in developing countries where properly trained healthcare professionals are difficult to find.
Right.
We have shown that by utilizing the innate visual recognition and learning capabilities of human crowds, it is possible to conduct reliable microscopic analysis of biomedical samples and make diagnostic decisions based on crowdsourcing of microscopic data.
How amazing.
Through games. They have everybody say, "What do you think this is?" How about that?
It's a social activity.
Specifically, so this is sounds like a paper. Using non-professional gamers, we report diagnosis of malaria-infected red blood cells with an accuracy that is within 1.25% of the diagnostic decisions made by a trained professional.
That's a humbling number.
Wish you both the best and apologize for bombarding your inbox. Not a problem.
Oh, no, that was interesting.
Next one is from Nick.
Okay, Nick.
I'm writing hoping that you haven't already been flooded with emails regarding heartworm treatment and resistance. And if you have, maybe I can still be able to contribute something. I'm a dual degree student at DVM PhD at Cornell University.
Nice.
And I'm studying the mosquito vector ecology of heartworm.
Okay.
As your listener mentioned, there have been some reports of persistent microfilariemia in dogs on preventive medication.
Right.
Some of the issue has been shown to be due to lack of owner compliance in administering the drug, but after controlling for that, there have still been dogs identified with persistent microfilariemia despite preventive treatment, and often after the adults have been killed or removed, which currently is the only standard method to clear the microfilariae.
Yeah.
This loss of efficacy is specifically of the microfilariae to clearance, not to melarsomin, which is the adulticide. Ivermectin formulations used as preventative microfilaricidal, which you eventually got to during the podcast anyway.
Yeah.
There have been some studies looking into the effect of doxycycline on clearing Wolbachia, Enterofilaria immitis, to reduce their ability to reproduce and possibly reduce microfilarial and larval fitness for transmission, which I thought you'd find interesting. So that's Dirofilaria immitis?
Yes. Yes.
I'll be sure.
Which people can catch occasionally, by the way, but it doesn't result in a mature infection. So it's aberrant, and usually it ends up in the lung. Remember we discussed this? And the semi-mature adult worm dies, and it forms this little round circle. It's called a Coin lesion. And that Coin lesion can often be mistaken for other more serious pathological conditions, like lung cancer, for instance.
Really?
So you have to distinguish right away.
Yeah.
So how would you do it? Serologically.
Serologically?
Yes.
I'll be sure to chime in on veterinary topics, or more likely, vector biology topics that I know something
Excellent.
about.
No, that's great.
Anytime, Nick.
And by the way, entomology as a field had its origins at Cornell University.
Really?
In Ithaca, that's right.
When? What year?
Back in the 20s, I think. I could be wrong
Was there
about
a
the timing.
specific person that...
There was, but I don't recall the name. But they are given credit for having developed this as a formal field of study.
And it continues to thrive there.
Yes. Agricultural entomology.
Thomas Eisner.
Yes. Medical entomology, and just plain old, everyday, run-of-the-mill entomology had its origins at that wonderful institution.
I was surprised to hear that Dick came to speak at Cornell, but I missed it.
You did.
I'll have to be more attentive next time.
You didn't know, and it was an odd lecture venue.
Keep up the good work. Alberto writes, "Dear Parasite hosts, I thought Dickson would be interested in this story from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation Science Show, which features an interview with Professor Darrell Davies of USC, in which he discusses the potential use of ivermectin for the treatment of alcoholism."
Really? Really?
So he puts a link to this show.
That is an interesting...
I found this recent article in Neuropharmacology from the Davies Lab, which describes the experimental use of ivermectin in a mouse model of alcohol dependence. I quote from the abstract. "In the present study, we investigated the effects of this agent on several models of alcohol self-administration in male and female mice. Overall, ivermectin significantly reduced 24-hour alcohol consumption and intermittent limited-access binge drinking and operant alcohol self-administration. The mechanism of action appears to be via antagonism of a purinergic receptor in the brain." In the interview, Professor Davies explains that in parasitic organisms, the drug acts by stimulating an excitatory glutamate chloride channel.
I didn't think ivermectin could get into the brain.
Really?
Yeah, it's too big. That's why it doesn't have a side effect in humans.
The excitatory glutamate chloride channel, by the way, was cloned by my wife.
I know this.
Did you know that?
I did know this, Vince.
She used to work on ivermectin.
I am highly impressed and proud to have you repeat that again.
We should get her to talk about it, but
Why
she
not?
probably won't.
But I don't think ivermectin crosses the human blood-brain barrier. It's just too big a molecule to get across.
I could text her right now and ask her.
Would you do that?
I will, but she'll say, "Why do you want to know?"
Oh, because we're curious people, that's why. I think that's the reason why there's no side effects from the drug when you give it to people. Otherwise, our chloride channel gated glutamate molecule would be interfered with.
All right, I'm asking her.
We're waiting for the answer. He's texting. He's sitting down at his chair, though. He's not driving. So we know that Vince is not a texter and driver.
It would be interesting to do a podcast in the car, but we would have to both be in the passenger seat.
This is true.
Next one is from Ethan. "I found this in the mail today from my water department and had to forward it to you guys. Looks as though my city's water is clean of any Cryptosporidium parasites, but
Thank
inhabitants
goodness.
of other Middle Tennessee areas perhaps are not so lucky." So he sent a copy of this.
Where does he live?
Somewhere in Tennessee.
Middle Tennessee, he says.
Okay, monitoring of the East Fork Stones River and J. Percy Priest Lake between 2005 and 2007 indicated the presence of Cryptosporidium in 7 out of 48 samples tested. And at this time, the water is okay.
It's seasonal, by the way. Do you know why? Because in the spring, when the calves are born and they're put out to pasture for the first time, they acquire cryptosporidium from the environment because the cysts are highly resistant and they winter over.
Yeah.
And the calves, because they have lost their maternal immune responses as a passive transfer from mother to calf,
Right.
they're now susceptible to the infection, and they exhibit an incredible projectile diarrheal disease, and it just puts a lot of oocysts into the environment. And in the spring, when you have these runoffs and they all go into the water supply, then the curve for oocysts per gallon, or however they measure their presence, is very high in the spring, but if you look in the summer or fall, it's low.
We have a listener, Charlotte, out in California,
Yes.
who knows all about this. So if you're still listening,
That's right. That's right.
she should chime in. I don't know if Charlotte still listens, though.
Right.
Okay, we got an answer.
We did.
Some does, but it's pumped out by a channel,
Oh.
by PGPS. That's some kind of a pump. It's been shown that PGP knockout mice died with ivermectin, and some collies also have altered PGP and die.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, so there's a pump that gets rid of it, and if you don't get rid of it, you can die. Yeah, so some collies can die from it.
Where is the pump located, though? Is that at the choroid plexus?
I don't know.
Or is it in the brain itself?
I don't know.
All right. Well, that's very interesting.
This is science real time.
You got it.
Thank you for Doris for answering right away. Should have her on to talk about the history of that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Tell you about the golf course in Japan, right,
It's
Dickson?
next to a golf course in Japan, not in the golf course.
Sorry that I gave you such a hard time.
No. It's correction of history to make it accurate.
All right,
Is
the
what
next
we're all
one
about.
is from Peter.
Great. Peter the Great.
Watching Origin of Us, a BBC Two documentary on human evolution.
Ah.
In episode 2, Guts, the host, Dr. Alice Roberts, mentions an interesting hypothesis relating to tapeworms. It appears that the lion tapeworm and the human tapeworm are very closely related. A DNA study is used to determine the time of worm speciation. It's assumed that around this time, humans began to steal or eat the same prey as lions.
Which is warthogs, probably.
Eventually, the worm evolves from humans as the intermediate host to becoming the definitive host, approximately 800,000 to 1.7 million BCE.
Interesting.
She does not cite the work, but being a BBC doco, I have no reason to doubt the work is genuine and published somewhere. Novel idea to use tapeworms for plotting meat eating in humans. That's cool, right?
Very cool.
It makes perfect sense, right?
How do you steal a prey from a lion?
How do you do that, Dickson?
I think very carefully, Vince. Very carefully. I thought it was the other way, actually.
Now I know why your son is a comedian.
Why?
You tell jokes.
That was not a joke.
Oh.
No.
How do you steal meat from a lion? Carefully.
You don't. You don't. The period. You just don't do it. You wait till the lion finishes eating and they're all full up, and that's rare that they would leave a carcass unfinished.
Next one is from Stephen. He sends us a link to a paper.
Yes.
Is it a paper or a book? Let's see as the link comes up here. The etymology of loa.
Etymology, not entomology.
No, etymology.
Because it is transferred by an insect.
It's in Parasitology Today.
Oh, good.
And I can get the whole PDF. Yeah, here we go.
Nice.
Because Stephen said he couldn't get it.
Oh, sell it. Send it to him. Well, we'll put that up too then.
It's recently been called to our attention that the word loa, used for centuries, first by Africans and later by parasitologists to refer to the eyeworm, also appears in the terminology of voodoo or vodun, where it refers to a large pantheon of deities that may possess one's soul or being. The word loa may be derived from the Yoruba word lawa, L''AWO, meaning mystery. But according to Bourguignon, its origin remains uncertain. To the devotees of Vodun, V-O-D-U-N, the noon hour when the sun casts no shadow is a perilous time. A man without a shadow is a man without a soul, and therefore vulnerable to possession by such spirits as Loa. To ward off these spirits, believers wear amulets and cast spells. African Vodun evolved in Benin, formerly Dahomey, and was brought to Haiti with slavery during the 17th and 18th centuries.
Hence the origin of modern voodoo.
Since both adults and microfilariae of the eyeworm loa are diurnal with maximum activity occurring at noon, when the West African would be most susceptible to spirit possession, and since West African vodun and the eyeworm share a common geographic origin, we have reached the tentative conclusion that one is probably the etymological source for the other.
Cool.
Whether the helminthological loa predated the anthropological one remains a matter of conjecture.
Ha!
Nice. I like that.
I do too. Yeah,
Thank you, Stephen. And we have just read it for you, so you don't have to pay $31 to get it. Rohit writes, Dear Docs, I listened to the fascinating episode Worm in the Eye, TWiP 40, earlier this week. Coincidentally, I saw this news story about a doctor taking out a worm from the eye in Mumbai, India today. This is an article from News India. Mumbai doctors removed 12.5 centimeter long worm from a man's eye.
I had no idea that Loa Loa was in India.
You didn't?
Well, maybe this is a guy who spent some time in Africa and then moved to India.
Huh.
I think Loa Loa is restricted in geography. I
Well,
could
he
be
may-
wrong, however.
Yeah. He's there.
Vince, let's go to the internet and see if I'm wrong.
What do you want to know?
Geographic distribution of Loa Loa.
All right.
This is called Ask Vince.
No, it's Ask Google.
Ask Google
Ask
if
the
it
internet.
even knows. I think it's
geographic.
localized to West Africa, as far as I know, because it's also known as Old Calabar swelling.
Yeah, West Africa.
Yeah,
Old Calabar swelling, yeah.
that's the way I've known it. So this man in India who had his eye worm removed, it could have been Loa Loa.
Restricted to the rainforest and swamp forest areas of West Africa.
Exactly. So this guy caught it in West Africa, but had it removed in India.
Yeah, probably. They don't say in the article, but that's probably what
Yeah,
happened.
so I don't want to mislead the readers to think that Loa Loa is everywhere. It's not. But remember who discovered it.
Loa Loa?
Yeah,
Who did?
the guy whose socks are named after him, Sir Robert Argyle.
Argyle.
And where did he live?
Africa.
No,
India?
he lived in Scotland.
How did he discover it?
So the woman who came to work for him was from Old Calabar in West Africa.
And she was infected.
And she was infected, and he actually isolated both the male and the female worm from the same patient and described the worm without ever having known anything else about it except that it's in that one person.
Rohit continues, I thought it would be interesting to hear Dr. Despommier's expert comments about this worm case. I apologize if the worm has already been discussed and have not just caught up with that particular episode. I'm curious if the doctor's statement is true. Quote, the worm could have traveled deeper into the eye or gone to the brain through the optic nerves, which could have been fatal.
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. This worm has a penchant for only the subcutaneous tissues. So this is not like another worm that I did describe, by the way, and that was Spirometra mancinoides, which is a tapeworm. In the larval form of that tapeworm, if they had removed that from his eye, then they would have saved his life, probably.
Okay.
So is that a roundworm, though? Did they actually identify this worm as Loa Loa? That's my point.
Well, that's a good question. Let's go back to the videotape. This is a picture of the worm, but you probably can't tell anything from that.
Well, Vince, you're closer than I am. Tell me if that's a roundworm or not.
It could be round. Yeah, it is round.
Round. Okay, fine. Then it's not Spirometra. But
So
it's
they
how
gave-
long?
12.5 centimeters. That's pretty long, isn't it?
That's a very long worm. That's longer than Loa
But he's got
Loa.
this man has a patch on his eye.
Let's go back now again to the internet and type out Loa Loa adult.
You want to know how big it is?
Yeah, it's not that big. I think this is a different worm. I think we're talking about something else here.
Loa Loa adults range from 20 to 70 millimeters long, 2 to 7 centimeters. This is a bit outside the
A
length.
bit outside. It's like 10 times bigger. So this is a roundworm that's 10 times bigger than Loa Loa, and he removed it from this guy's eye.
So what is it, Dickson?
That's a very good question, Vince.
It's probably not Loa Loa.
No. Let's think of another worm.
Actually, they
What about...
don't say it's Loa Loa in the article.
No, they don't. What about Dracunculus medanensis in an aberrant site? That's big enough to be
Could
dracunculus.
be, yeah.
And it is in India, by the way. So my guess, just off the top of my head here, is that what they've removed from this guy's eye is an aberrant form of Dracunculus medinensis. And we've had a show on that one also. And that's big enough to be a Dracunculus.
So if it were a dracunculus, could it have gone into his brain?
Good question. It's a very good question. Again, that worm too, like Loa, has a penchant for the subcutaneous tissues. It's not to say that it wouldn't be found somewhere else by just bad luck, but,
Yeah, interesting.
very. Raises more questions than it answers, actually.
Dr. Despommier is a wonderful storyteller. I find it amazing how much he can remember. Keep up.
So does he, by the way.
Keep up the awesome worm stories, coming along with some very intriguing questions from Dr. Racaniello.
Indeed.
So Rohit is a postdoc at Einstein.
Nice.
He's actually a virologist
Really?
in the Chandran lab,
That other
and I met him at ASV.
nice going.
Rohit is a PhD DVM. He's a veterinarian.
So he knows all about parasites.
I don't know if you remember the story on the Ebola receptor. Did you participate with us?
I might have.
Anyway, we discussed that, and he's one of the authors.
Oh, nice.
Ethan writes, should we keep going a little more?
Absolutely. I'm enjoying this. I hope you are too.
66 minutes.
No, it's fine.
Actually, we only have two more.
Let's do them. Let's complete our mail,
Ethan writes,
empty our mailbox.
Dickson mentioned how crazy it is that ticks can live up to 50 years in a dormant state without taking a blood meal.
Right.
And it immediately reminded me of this. This is an article. Ticks found able to survive being subjected to electron microscopy.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
After subjected to conditions within a vacuum and being blasted by
That's
an electron beam, the tick keeps
On ticking.
Wonderful. That's just great.
Or it doesn't get ticked off.
Dickson.
Sorry.
Should that be the title? The tick keeps on ticking.
Tick keeps on ticking.
What do you think, Dickson?
Ticks keep on ticking.
Not the tick?
Well,
I like the tick keeps on ticking. There's
Right.
just something about it.
and you know what they call people with PhDs that study them, don't you? Tick ducks.
Oh, that's good. Tick docks.
Tick ducks.
You heard it here. The last one is from Joanne.
Arg.
Great podcast. I'm a graduate student in epidemiology and am completing my practicum this summer working as a health inspector in a coastal town. One of the health agents I work with used to be a chef at one of the local restaurants. She described to me, warning, this is gross, how they used to use tweezers to pull out little 1-inch worms from cod and swordfish
You bet.
that would later be cooked and served.
You bet.
My question's for you. Do you have any idea what these worms might be?
We actually did a show on that.
What is it,
It's
Dickson?
anasacids. These are larval stages of large roundworms that live in the gut tract of cetaceans. Remember?
Whales.
Whales. And porpoises as well.
And they excrete them, and
They
the fish pick them up?
Yeah, they lay their eggs. The eggs then are eaten by planktivores, right? And the planktivores are then eaten by baby codfish, let's say. The eggs then hatch in the gut tract of the codfish, and they live there. They don't go out of the gut tract, all right, until the codfish is caught or eaten. If the codfish is caught and then put on ice, not right away,
Yeah.
the worm senses something is wrong with its host and penetrates out of the gut tract into the muscle of the tissue of the fish. Because, as I mentioned in the episode that we discussed Ascaris and its relatives, and this is one of the relatives of Ascaris, in the ocean there is something called a rain of
Yeah.
life.
Right.
And all the dead fish, what do you think happens to all those dead fish? Where do you think they go?
Bottom.
To the bottom.
You know, all the microbes do the same.
Or in the Chinese
As they
trawlers,
die,
one of
as
those
they're
two
laced by
things.
viruses.
Yes.
The Emiliania huxleyi. They go down.
Amelia Huxley.
You like E-hux?
I love E-hux. It's one of my all-time favorite organisms. Without them, we wouldn't have clouds.
Yeah, there are viruses of them too.
We can talk about that some other time.
All right.
So those are
so,
anisakids.
Anisakids. Is there any chance that ingesting them, or perhaps eggs, larvae, etc., of these worms would make humans sick?
Let's talk about that just for a moment. If you ingested the live larva, the answer is yes. They will attempt to penetrate your stomach, thinking you are either a pinniped or a cetacean, but you're not. And they immediately find that out and say, ugh. Then they just sit there in this lesion that they've caused. But you, in the meantime, develop a very specific epigastric pain. If you use a gastroscope, if you're a gastroenterologist, and you come to a gastroenterologist, says it must be something I ate, you would be wrong. It's something that ate you. And they look and they see this lesion and they look closer and they see the tail of a worm wiggling around. They can reach in with a pinchers and actually pick the worm out.
Really?
Yeah.
Just like you pick it out of the fish.
So in Holland, that's right. In Holland, this was a big problem with the green herring because it was lightly brined, but it wasn't brined enough to kill the worms. So they had a huge outbreak of anisakiasis. And they've learned their lesson. In sushi restaurants, remember I discussed sushi also, you flash freeze the meat in liquid nitrogen. It doesn't destroy the consistency of the meat, but it kills the larvae when you thaw them back out.
Exactly, yeah.
All right.
Regardless, still pretty nasty.
Indeed.
Keep up the great podcasts. I have a long commute usually and have been twipping and re-twipping.
Excellent. Well, we'll try to twip more often so you don't have to re-twip that often.
This is great. I really enjoyed this.
Oh, me too.
We would really like to get more questions. I think there are a few more, but send them to twip@twiv.tv. And Dickson, you see, he really enjoyed answering them.
I enjoyed trying to answer
and I
them.
enjoyed learning. And we have one we'll send to Guads. I had a couple from last time.
Well, I enjoyed the answer your wife gave also to the question.
It's nice that she responded.
The blood-brain barrier question.
Because she's been texting me while we were recording about other things, and I didn't answer her, and I figured she might be mad. But
well, she's miffed.
When it comes to science...
And MIF, you know what that stands for,
She is a scientist.
Yes.
So that probably trumps everything.
I think it does.
You can find TWiP at microbeworld.org/TWiP. That's where we keep all the show notes that Dickson referred to earlier. Right. But you should subscribe in iTunes because the more people who subscribe, the more likely we are to remain on the front page of the medicine science podcast section. And that way more people can find us.
True.
We want to grow our audience.
Indeed.
Because we think that learning this information is really important for everyone. So we do encourage you to go over to iTunes and subscribe and also leave a comment or a rating if you haven't done so already. Anything else, Dickson?
Not at the moment. I can't think of anything.
I can think of many things.
Well, not related to this podcast, let's put it that way.
Dickson Despommier is at trichinella.org, medicalecology.com, and verticalfarm.com. Thank you, Dickson.
You're welcome, Vincent.
It is very nice of you to do this. I realize you're just back.
It's a pleasure to do this.
I will try to edit and post this today.
You are outstanding.
Same day. I've never done that.
You're outstanding.
I think I might be able to do it, but we are recording TWiV in 2 hours. So
we are.
We'll have to work around that.
I'm going to surprise all the other participants by being here.
I think we should not say anything until we introduce you.
Exactly. Make it a big surprise.
I'm Vincent Raqueniello. You can find me at my blog, virology.ws. That's all about viruses, not parasites.
Those are parasites. They're just tiny little parasites.
They can't exist on their own, right?
No, they can't. That's probably the definition of a parasite no matter what.
You've been listening to This Week in Parasitism. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon. Another TWiP is parasitic. do you not like to do this? It's so much fun.
I said I love to do this.
I just give you hell.
No, you don't. You give me heck.
What is that?
It's a milder form of hell. It's a politer form.
So you're a hexter?
Yeah.
You're not a huckster.
I'm not a huckster.
Thank you, Dickson.
You're welcome, Vince.